The iron gates of the Whitmore estate groaned open for the first time in 7 years, their hinges protesting against the weight of neglect and ivy that had claimed them. Marcus Whitmore sat in the back of the black sedan, watching through tinted windows as the long driveway unfurled before him like a ribbon of forgotten memories. The mansion rose in the distance, its gray stone facade darkened by years of abandonment, windows like empty eyes staring back at him with accusation. He had sworn never to return to this place. The car rolled to a stop in front of the main entrance, where weeds had broken through the decorative stonework of the circular drive. Marcus stepped out, his expensive Italian shoes crunching against gravel mixed with fallen leaves. At 42, he had built an empire that spanned 3 continents, turned failing companies into gold mines, and earned a reputation as the man who could salvage anything, everything except perhaps his own past. Mr. Whitmore, shall I wait? His driver asked, but Marcus waved him away. He needed to face this alone. The front door was supposed to be locked, secured by the property management company he'd paid handsomely to maintain the estate's exterior and keep trespassers away. But as he reached for his keys, he noticed something odd. The door was slightly ajar, and from somewhere deep within the house came a sound that made him freeze. Laughter. A child's laughter. Marcus pushed the door open slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. The grand foyer stretched before him, and despite 7 years of emptiness, it wasn't the abandoned shell he'd expected. Someone had swept the floors, the afternoon light streaming through the tall windows, illuminated furniture that had been uncovered and arranged with care. A small pink backpack sat on the bottom step of the sweeping staircase, next to a pair of tiny sneakers. "Tommy, careful with that!" a woman's voice called from somewhere above. Marcus moved quietly through the foyer, his mind racing. Squatters? But the property was monitored, wasn't it? He'd been sending checks every month to ensure the place remained untouched, a monument to everything he'd tried to leave behind when he'd fled to New York after the accident. "Mommy, look! I made it go all the way across!" The voice came from the second-floor landing. Marcus climbed the stairs, each step awakening memories he'd tried to bury. His father's booming laugh, his mother's gentle corrections, and later, much later, the sound of sirens cutting through the night. At the top of the stairs, he found them. A boy, no more than 6 years old, was sailing a paper airplane across the wide hallway. It glided past a young girl, perhaps 4, who clapped her hands in delight, and standing in the doorway of what used to be his mother's reading room was a woman in her early 30s, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing jeans and a faded blue sweater with paint stains on the sleeves. She saw him first. The color drained from her face. "Tommy, Rosie, go to your room," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear Marcus could see in her hazel eyes. "But Mom, now please." The children obeyed, casting curious glances at Marcus as they disappeared into one of the bedrooms. The woman stood her ground, her chin lifted in defiance, even as her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "I can explain," she said. Marcus studied her for a long moment. She didn't look like a typical squatter. Her clothes were worn, but clean, and there was something in her bearing, a quiet dignity that spoke of someone who'd fallen on hard times but hadn't lost herself in the fall. "You're living in my house," he said, his voice colder than he intended. "I know. I'm sorry. I thought... The place has been empty for so long, and we had nowhere else to go." She took a breath. "My name is Claire Bennett. I lost my job 6 months ago and then our apartment. The shelters were full, and I have 2 children who needed a roof over their heads. I've been taking care of the place, cleaning, making small repairs. I wasn't trying to steal from you." Marcus walked past her into the reading room. It had been transformed. The dusty old furniture was gone, replaced by mismatched pieces that were clearly second-hand, but lovingly arranged. Children's drawings covered one wall, rainbows and houses and stick figure families. A small kitchen had been set up in the corner, just a hot plate and a mini fridge, but everything was immaculately organized. "How did you get in?" he asked. Claire hesitated. "The south terrace door. The lock was broken. I fixed it after we moved in, and the security company I've been paying for 7 years? They drive by once a week. They never actually check inside. I've been careful to keep the curtains drawn on the south side." Marcus turned to face her, She met his gaze without flinching, and he saw something there that surprised him, not just fear of being caught, but shame. This woman had pride, and living in someone else's abandoned home had cost her something. "How long?" he asked. 3 months. 3 months. While he'd been closing deals in Manhattan and London, making his 5th million this year alone, this woman and her children had been hiding in his family's estate, living off whatever she could manage with 2 small children in tow. "The property management company will hear about this," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. "They're supposed to—" "Please," the words stopped him. "Please, just give me 3 days. I'll find somewhere else to go. I have a little money saved from doing odd jobs around town. I just need a few days to find a place that will take us. Please don't call the police. My children. They've been through enough." There was a story there, Marcus realized. A story written in the fine lines around her eyes, in the way her voice cracked just slightly when she mentioned her children, in the desperation barely contained beneath her careful composure. He should call the police, or at least his lawyers. This was trespassing, plain and simple. Instead, he found himself looking at the drawings on the wall, at the paper airplane lying on the floor, at the evidence of life in a house that had been dead for 7 years. "Why this house?" he asked. "Of all the empty buildings in this town, why here?" Claire's expression softened. "My daughter Rosie was sick. We'd been sleeping in our car, and she developed pneumonia. I brought her to the hospital, and afterward, I was desperate. I'd heard about the old Whitmore estate, how it had been empty for years. I just needed a safe place for her to recover. And then..." She gestured around the room. "It felt like home. I know that sounds insane. It's not my home. But my kids? They've been happy here. Rosie calls it the Magic Castle. Tommy learned to ride a bike in the courtyard. It's the first place they've felt safe since their father." She stopped abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. Marcus waited, but she didn't continue. Instead, small footsteps sounded from the hallway, and the little girl, Rosie, appeared in the doorway, clutching a worn, stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, is the man going to make us leave the castle?" she asked, her voice small. Claire knelt down and pulled her daughter close. "We might need to find a new adventure, sweetheart." The little girl's eyes filled with tears. "But I don't want to leave. This is where I got better. This is where the nice lady visits me." Marcus frowned. "Nice lady?" Claire shook her head quickly. "She has an imaginary friend, kids her age." "She's not imaginary," Rosie insisted. "She comes to my room at night and tells me stories. She has pretty silver hair and she smells like roses. And she said this was her house a long time ago." The room seemed to tilt. Marcus gripped the back of a chair, his knuckles white. Silver hair. Roses. His mother's signature perfume had been rose-scented. She'd worn it every day until the night she'd died in this house, in the room directly below where this child now slept. "What kind of stories?" Marcus heard himself ask, his voice barely above a whisper. "Stories about a little boy who lived here," Rosie said simply. "She said he was sad after she went away, but she wants him to know she's not sad anymore. She's happy, and she wants him to be happy too." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He turned away, moving to the window that overlooked the gardens where he'd played as a child, where his mother had taught him the names of every flower, where 7 years ago he'd stood at her funeral and vowed never to return because the memories were too painful to bear. Behind him, he heard Claire whisper urgently to her daughter, heard the child's small footsteps retreat, but he couldn't move, couldn't think beyond the impossible thing this child had just said. When he finally turned around, Claire was standing alone, her arms still wrapped around herself protectively. "I know you want us gone," she said quietly. "I understand. We've trespassed, and there's no excuse for that, no matter how desperate we were. But please, I'm begging you, give us until the weekend. I promise we'll disappear, and you'll never know we were here." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. She wasn't just asking for mercy. She was preparing to fight for her children with whatever strength she had left, even against a billionaire who could destroy her with a single phone call. And in that moment, Marcus Whitmore made a decision that would change everything. "No," he said. Claire's face crumbled, but before she could speak, he continued. You're not leaving this weekend. You're not leaving at all until we figure this out properly. I need to understand what's really happening here." The silence that followed Marcus's declaration stretched between them like a taut wire. Claire stared at him, confusion and suspicion warring in her expression. "I don't understand," she finally said. "You're not calling the police?" "Not yet," Marcus replied, surprised by his own words. He moved away from the window, his mind still reeling from what the child had said. "I need coffee. Do you have coffee?" Claire blinked at the mundane request. "Yes, downstairs in the kitchen." "The real kitchen, I mean. I've been using it sometimes." Marcus nodded and headed toward the stairs. After a moment's hesitation, Claire followed. They walked through the house in silence, past the formal dining room where dust sheets still covered most of the furniture, past the library where Marcus had spent countless hours as a boy, and into the massive kitchen that had once been his mother's domain. Here, too, Claire had left her mark. The industrial appliances had been scrubbed clean. Herbs grew in small pots on the windowsill above the sink. A child's drawing was held to the refrigerator with a magnet, a crude but cheerful depiction of 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house with too many windows. Claire moved to the coffee maker with practiced efficiency, and Marcus realized she'd been living here long enough to know where everything was. While she prepared the coffee, he sat at the long wooden table where his family had shared countless meals, running his hand along the scarred surface. "This table was my great-grandfather's," he said quietly. "He built it himself when he first came to this country with nothing but $20 and a dream." Claire glanced at him, uncertain how to respond. She set a steaming mug in front of him and took a seat across the table, maintaining a careful distance. "Mr. Whitmore." "Marcus," he interrupted. "If you're living in my house, you might as well use my first name." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Marcus, I need to know what you meant upstairs. What do we need to figure out?" Marcus took a sip of coffee, buying himself time. What was he doing? By all rights, he should evict this family immediately, call his lawyers, ensure his property was secured. Instead, he found himself saying, "Tell me about your children's father." Claire's hands tightened around her own mug. "That's personal. You're living in my house. I think I'm entitled to some personal information." She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "His name was David. We met in college, got married too young, had Tommy right away. He was a good man, but he struggled. Depression, anxiety. He couldn't keep a job for more than a few months. I was working as a teacher's aide, but it wasn't enough to support all of us, especially after Rosie was born." "Was?" Marcus caught the past tense. Claire's voice dropped. "He died 2 years ago. Car accident. He'd been drinking. Tommy found out later that his father had driven into a tree on purpose." She looked up, her eyes fierce despite the pain there. "My son doesn't need to know that. As far as he's concerned, it was just an accident." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. "I'm sorry. After that, everything fell apart. I lost the teaching job because I couldn't focus. We moved to a cheaper apartment, then a cheaper one. I took whatever work I could find, cleaning houses, waitressing, retail, but Rosie got sick last winter and the medical bills." She shook her head. "I did everything right, Mr. Whitmore. Marcus, I worked hard. I loved my children. I tried to hold everything together, but sometimes that's not enough. And so you broke into my house, and so I broke into your house." She agreed, meeting his gaze steadily. "I'm not proud of it, but I'd do it again if it meant keeping my children safe and warm." Marcus found himself respecting her honesty. The security company, they really never checked inside? Not once. I think they assumed the place was locked up tight. I was careful. We never made noise during the day when anyone might be around. The kids knew to be quiet. It was like living as ghosts, until today. Until today. Claire leaned forward. "Why are you here now? After 7 years?" It was Marcus's turn to be uncomfortable. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the overgrown gardens. "My lawyer called last week. There's been a lawsuit. A business matter. The opposing party is trying to paint me as someone who abandons his responsibilities, who runs away from problems. They found out about this place, that I've let it rot for 7 years. It looks bad. So you came back for your image." "I came back because I have to decide what to do with this house," Marcus said sharply, then softened his tone. I haven't been here since my mother's funeral. She died in her sleep, in her bedroom upstairs. Stroke. I was in Tokyo closing a deal when it happened. By the time I got home, she was already gone. Claire's expression shifted to sympathy. I'm sorry, that must have been terrible. She was all I had left. My father died when I was 15. No siblings. After she was gone, I couldn't stand to be here. Every corner of this house reminded me of her, of everything I'd lost while I was too busy making money to spend time with the people who mattered. Is that why you never sold it? Marcus turned to face her. I couldn't. It's been in my family for 3 generations. But I couldn't live here either. So it just sat, empty, while I told myself I'd deal with it someday. And now someday is here, Claire said softly. Before Marcus could respond, footsteps thundered on the stairs, and Tommy burst into the kitchen. The boy was all energy and wide eyes, his dark hair sticking up in several directions. Mom, Rosie says we're staying. Is that true? The man with the fancy car says we can stay. Claire shot Marcus a questioning look. He found himself nodding before he'd consciously made the decision. For now, he said, but we need to establish some rules. Tommy's face broke into a grin. Rules are okay. We're good at rules. We're super quiet and we clean up and everything. Despite himself, Marcus felt his lips twitch. I can see that. The house looks better than when I left it. Mom says we have to take care of things that take care of us, Tommy announced proudly. And this house took care of us when we were cold and Rosie was sick, so we take care of it back. The simple wisdom of it struck Marcus unexpectedly. When was the last time he'd taken care of anything beyond his business interests? When had he last thought about anything taking care of him? Rosie appeared in the doorway, more cautious than her brother, still clutching her stuffed rabbit. She studied Marcus with solemn eyes. Are you the sad little boy? She asked. Marcus froze. What? The nice lady's little boy, the one in her stories. Are you him? Claire stood quickly. Rosie, honey, that's not appropriate. It's fine, Marcus said, though his voice was rough. He knelt down to Rosie's level. What else did the nice lady tell you about him? Rosie considered this carefully. She said he was smart and kind, and he loved her very much. But after she went to sleep forever, he forgot how to be happy. She wants him to remember. The room seemed to spin. Marcus had to grip the counter to steady himself. His mother had called him smart and kind. Those exact words. She'd said them to him the last time they'd spoken on the phone, 2 days before her death. You're so smart and kind, Marcus. Don't ever lose that just because you're successful. But he had lost it, hadn't he? He'd become hard, focused solely on winning, on building his empire, on proving he could turn anything into gold. Everything except his own life. Marcus? Claire's hand was on his arm, her voice concerned. Are you okay? You're pale. He straightened, trying to collect himself. I'm fine. It's just been a long day. He looked down at Rosie. Thank you for telling me about the nice lady. The child smiled, then suddenly stepped forward and hugged his leg. She's happy you came home, she whispered. Marcus stood frozen, this tiny stranger clinging to him, and felt something crack in the armor he'd built around his heart. That evening, after an awkward dinner, where Tommy chattered endlessly about everything they'd discovered in the house, Marcus found himself sitting in his mother's reading room. Claire had put the children to bed and joined him, 2 cups of tea in her hands. They like you, she said, offering him a cup. They don't know me. Kids are good judges of character. She settled into a chair across from him. So what happens now, really? Marcus had been asking himself the same question. I need to stay here for a few weeks, sort through some things, decide about the house. You and the kids can stay in the East Wing. We'll keep to our own spaces mostly. You're serious. I'm serious. He met her eyes. But Claire, I need to know. Have you noticed anything else unusual? Besides Rosie's imaginary friend? Claire bit her lip. There is one thing. Sometimes at night I smell roses, just for a moment, in the hallway outside Rosie's room. And once I could have sworn I heard someone humming. An old song, something from the 40s maybe. Marcus's blood ran cold. His mother had hummed that exact era of songs while she worked in the garden. What song? I don't know the name. Something about a nightingale singing in Berkeley Square. His mother's favorite. She'd hummed it constantly. Marcus, what's going on? Claire asked, her voice worried. You look like you've seen a ghost. Maybe I have, he said quietly. Or maybe my daughter is seeing one for me. What Marcus didn't tell Claire was what he'd found that afternoon while she was making dinner. In his mother's bedroom, in the drawer of her nightstand, he'd discovered her journal. The last entry was dated the night before she died. I know my time is coming soon. I can feel it. But I'm not afraid. I've had a good life, even if it ended too soon for Marcus's taste. I just hope that someday he comes back here. I hope he finds a reason to remember that this house was built on love, not money. I hope he finds a family again. Below that, in his mother's careful handwriting, were the words, "The house knows what it needs. Trust it." Marcus closed the journal and stared out the window at the darkening sky. His mother had always believed the house had a spirit, that it protected the family within its walls. He dismissed it as sentimentality. But now, with a homeless woman and 2 children living here, with Rosie claiming to see his mother's ghost, with everything in his carefully controlled life suddenly spinning into chaos, Marcus wondered if his mother had been right all along. The house knew what it needed, and apparently, so did he. The following days fell into an unexpected rhythm. Marcus worked from the library, converting it into a temporary office while conference calls with Tokyo and London echoed through rooms that hadn't heard business discussed in years. Claire maintained the house with quiet efficiency, and the children moved through the mansion like small explorers discovering new territories. On the 3rd morning, Marcus found Tommy in the garage, staring with wide-eyed wonder at the vintage cars covered in dust sheets. "Whoa," the boy breathed. "Are these all yours?" Marcus pulled back one of the covers, revealing a cherry-red 1967 Mustang. "This was my father's." He restored it himself. "It's the coolest thing I've ever seen." Tommy's fingers hovered over the hood, not quite touching. "Does it still work?" "I don't know. It's been sitting here for over 20 years. On impulse, Marcus opened the driver's door. "Want to sit inside?" Tommy's face lit up like Christmas morning. He scrambled into the seat, his small hands gripping the steering wheel. "Vroom, vroom! Mom, look, I'm driving!" Claire appeared in the garage doorway, a laundry basket on her hip. "Tommy, don't bother Mr. Whitmore, he's fine," Marcus said, surprised by how true it was. Watching the boy's joy reminded him of his own childhood, of sitting in the same seat while his father made engine noises and pretended they were racing across the country. "Your father must have been an interesting man," Claire said, setting down the basket. "He was a mechanic, worked his way up to owning 3 auto shops before he died. My mother used to joke that he loved cars more than people." Marcus smiled at the memory, but he loved her most of all. Every Sunday he'd take her for a drive in this Mustang. They'd be gone for hours. "That's beautiful." "Tommy," Marcus said suddenly, "how would you like to help me get this car running again?" The boy's eyes went impossibly wider. "Really? You mean it?" "Really. But you have to follow instructions exactly. Deal?" "Deal." Over the next week, Marcus found himself spending his mornings on conference calls and his afternoons in the garage with Tommy, teaching the boy about engines, about patience, about how sometimes broken things could be fixed if you were willing to put in the work. Claire would bring them lunch, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the walls between them began to crumble. One evening, Marcus discovered Rosie in the music room, standing before the grand piano that had been his mother's pride and joy. "Does it still make music?" she asked, her small voice reverent. Marcus sat at the bench and pressed a key. The note rang clear and true. Apparently, yes. "Will you play something?" He hadn't touched a piano since his mother died. She'd been the musician in the family, filling the house with Chopin and Debussy, but his fingers found the keys almost of their own accord, picking out a simple melody his mother had taught him. Rosie climbed onto the bench beside him. "The nice lady plays this song too. She plays it for me at night sometimes." Marcus's hand stilled. "Rosie, can you tell me more about the nice lady? What else does she say?" The child thought carefully. She says the house was lonely. She says it missed having children. She says she brought us here. What do you mean she brought you here? The night Mommy was driving looking for somewhere to go, we were lost. I was really sick and everything hurt. Then I saw the lady in the back seat with me. She smiled and pointed, and Mommy turned the car that way, and we found the broken door. Marcus felt chills run down his spine. Did your mother see her too? Rosie shook her head. Just me. The lady said I was special. She said I could see her because my heart was open. The child leaned against him trustingly. She's happy you're here. She says the house needs you. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He wandered the halls and found himself outside his mother's old bedroom. He hadn't entered it since returning. Taking a breath, he pushed open the door. The room was exactly as she'd left it. Claire had cleaned it but changed nothing. His mother's reading glasses sat on the nightstand. Her favorite shawl draped over the chair by the window, and everywhere, the faint scent of roses. Mom, he whispered into the darkness, if you're really here, I need a sign. I need to know what I'm supposed to do. The room remained silent. Marcus turned to leave, feeling foolish, when moonlight streaming through the window caught something on the dresser. A music box he'd given his mother for her 50th birthday. He picked it up, wound the key, and opened the lid. The familiar melody filled the room, the same song he'd played on the piano for Rosie. And tucked inside the music box, placed where he couldn't possibly have missed it, was a note in his mother's handwriting. My darling Marcus, if you're reading this, you've finally come home. The house has been waiting for you, and so have I. Don't be afraid of what comes next. Sometimes the greatest gifts arrive in the most unexpected packages. Trust your heart, my son. It knows the way. All my love, always, Mom. But that was impossible. He'd checked this music box years ago when sorting through her things. It had been empty. Marcus sank onto his mother's bed, the note trembling in his hands. Around him, the house seemed to breathe, to settle, to whisper secrets in a language just beyond understanding. The next morning brought an unexpected crisis. Marcus was reviewing contracts when Claire burst into the library, her face pale. It's Rosie. She's burning up with fever. I need to take her to the hospital, but I don't have a car, and... Marcus was on his feet instantly. I'll drive you. Get her ready. 20 minutes later, they were racing toward the county hospital, Rosie wrapped in blankets in the back seat with Tommy holding her hand. Claire sat rigid in the passenger seat, her fear palpable. She'll be okay, Marcus said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. You don't know that. Last time she got this sick, we almost lost her. At the hospital, Marcus made calls while Claire stayed with Rosie. By the time the doctor emerged 3 hours later, Marcus had arranged for the best pediatric specialist in the state to consult on the case. She has pneumonia again, Claire said when she finally came out, her eyes red from crying. They want to keep her for a few days. The doctor said if we'd waited even another day, she couldn't finish. But you didn't wait, Marcus said firmly. She's getting the care she needs. I can't afford this. Claire's voice broke. The last hospital stay nearly bankrupted us. I have no insurance. No way to pay. It's handled. She stared at him. What? The bills are handled. My company has an excellent health plan. I'm adding you and the children as dependents of a household employee. Marcus, I can't accept that. It's too much. You're living in my house, taking care of it. That makes you an employee. This is just logistics. He met her eyes. Let me help, Claire, please. She searched his face, and whatever she saw there made her nod slowly. Thank you, she whispered. Tommy tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Can we stay with Rosie? I don't want her to be alone. Of course, Marcus said. Then, to his own surprise, he added, I'll stay too. They spent the night in Rosie's hospital room. Tommy fell asleep in a chair, and Claire dozed fitfully. Marcus sat by the window, watching the sick child sleep, and found himself making silent bargains with any power that might be listening. Around 3 a.m, Rosie's eyes fluttered open. She looked directly at Marcus and smiled. She's here, the child whispered. The nice lady. She says not to worry. She says you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. Then Rosie drifted back to sleep, her breathing easier, her fever finally breaking. Marcus looked around the room, seeing nothing unusual, but feeling something he hadn't felt in 7 years. A presence, warm and familiar, like a hand on his shoulder or a kiss on his forehead. "Thank you," he whispered to the empty air. 3 days later, they brought Rosie home. Marcus carried her upstairs while Tommy ran ahead, chattering about all the things they'd do when she felt better. Claire followed more slowly, her exhaustion evident. "Go rest," Marcus told her. "I'll sit with her." "You've done so much already. Go." She went. Marcus settled into the chair beside Rosie's bed. The child looked so small, so fragile. Yet she'd survived more in her short life than many adults ever faced. "Mr. Marcus?" Rosie's voice was soft. "I'm here. Are you going to make us leave when I'm better?" The question pierced his heart. "No, sweetheart. You're not going anywhere." "Promise?" Marcus found himself saying words he hadn't planned, words that came from somewhere deeper than logic or reason. "I promise. This is your home now, yours and Tommy's and your mother's." Rosie smiled and closed her eyes. "The nice lady said you'd say that. She said you just needed to remember how to be a family." Marcus sat in the quiet room, watching the child sleep, and realized with startling clarity that he'd been given a gift. Not just the house coming back to life, not just the mystery of his mother's apparent presence, but something more profound. He'd been given a second chance. His phone buzzed with a message from his lawyer. The lawsuit had been settled in his favor. The opposing party had withdrawn all claims. Normally, such news would have energized him, sent him back to his office ready to plan the next conquest. Instead, Marcus turned off his phone and stayed where he was, keeping watch over a sick child who wasn't his, but somehow felt like she belonged to him anyway. Outside the window, in the overgrown gardens, something moved. Marcus looked up to see a figure standing among the roses, a woman with silver hair, wearing a dress from another era. She looked up at the window, smiled, and faded like morning mist. Marcus didn't feel afraid. He felt, for the first time in 7 years, at peace. Spring arrived at the Whitmore estate with an explosion of color. The gardens that Marcus and Tommy had spent weeks clearing burst into bloom, revealing his mother's carefully planned design. Roses climbing the stone walls, lavender lining the paths, beds of tulips and daffodils creating rivers of yellow and red. Claire had taken over the vegetable garden, teaching both children about growing their own food, about patience and nurturing. It had been 3 months since Marcus first found them in his house. 3 months that had transformed everything. The Mustang ran beautifully now, its engine purring like a satisfied cat. Tommy could name every part under the hood and spent hours in the garage helping Marcus restore 2 other vintage cars. The boy had bloomed under Marcus's attention, his natural mechanical aptitude shining through. Rosie had fully recovered, stronger than before. She still talked about the nice lady occasionally, though the visits seemed less frequent now. Marcus had stopped questioning it. Some things, he'd learned, didn't need rational explanations. Claire had transformed from the desperate woman he'd found that first day into something radiant. She'd enrolled in online classes to finish her teaching degree, studying at night at the kitchen table while Marcus worked on business plans nearby. Their conversations had evolved from careful politeness to genuine friendship, and lately, into something neither of them had dared to name. Marcus found himself watching her, the way she laughed at Tommy's jokes, the gentle patience she showed Rosie, the fierce determination she brought to rebuilding her life. She'd refused his charity beyond the medical bills, insisting on earning her keep. So he'd officially hired her as the estate manager, a position that came with a real salary and benefits. She'd cried when he presented her with the contract, and he'd nearly kissed her then. Nearly. The barrier between them remained unspoken but present. She was living in his house with her children. He was a billionaire who could, with a word, change or destroy their lives. The power imbalance felt too great, too fraught with complications, until the day everything changed. Marcus was in his mother's old bedroom, which he'd finally claimed as his own, when Claire knocked on the open door. "Can we talk?" she asked, her expression serious. "Of course." He closed his laptop. "Is everything okay?" She entered slowly, holding an envelope. "I received this today. It's from a school district 2 towns over. They're offering me a full-time teaching position starting in the fall. Good salary, benefits, the whole package. Marcus felt his stomach drop. That's wonderful. You've been working toward this. It comes with subsidized housing. A small house, nothing fancy, but it would be ours. Mine and the kids. She sat on the edge of a chair, not quite looking at him. It's what I've been trying to get back to. Independence, stability, a normal life for my children. You should take it, Marcus said, each word feeling like broken glass. It's a great opportunity. I know. Claire finally met his eyes. So why does it feel like I'd be making a terrible mistake? The air between them crackled with unspoken things. Marcus stood, moving to the window, needing the distance to think clearly. Claire, I can't ask you to stay. It wouldn't be fair. You have your own life to build and I... He stopped, unsure how to finish. You what? She stood too, moving closer. Marcus, these past 3 months have been the happiest my children have ever been. Tommy idolizes you. Rosie thinks you hung the moon, and I... She took a breath. I've fallen in love with you. The words hung in the air, honest and terrifying. Marcus turned to face her, his heart hammering. You can't mean that. You're grateful, that's all. I helped you when you needed it, but that's not love. Don't tell me what I feel, Claire said, her voice sharp. I'm 32 years old. I've been married, widowed, and homeless. I know the difference between gratitude and love. The question is, do you feel anything for me, or are we just your charity project? Charity project? Marcus felt anger flash through him. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what to think. You've kept me at arm's length for 3 months. You're kind to my children. You're generous to a fault, but you never, she gestured helplessly, you never let me see what you're really feeling. Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching her. What I'm feeling. I'm terrified, Claire. I'm terrified that if I let myself love you and your children, something will happen. Everyone I've ever loved has left. My father, my mother. I built walls around my heart because it was easier than risking that kind of pain again. And you think those walls have protected you? Claire's eyes glistened with tears. Marcus, you've been in pain for 7 years. You've been alone in a world full of people. Your mother didn't want that for you. You don't know what my mother wanted. Yes, I do. Claire pulled a folded paper from her pocket. His mother's note from the music box. I found this the day after the hospital, when I was changing the sheets in here. I read it. I know I shouldn't have, but I did. And Marcus, she was right. We are an unexpected gift, all of us. But gifts only work if you accept them. Marcus stared at the note in her hand, then at Claire's face, fierce and beautiful, and offering him everything he was afraid to take. I'm broken, he whispered. I don't know how to be what you need. You already are. Claire's hand came up to touch his face, gentle as a promise. You taught my son that he matters, that his interests and dreams are important. You sat by my daughter's hospital bed all night. You gave us a home, not just a house. You let us see the real you, not the billionaire, not the business genius, but the man who still grieves his mother, who restores old cars because they remind him of his father, who plays piano in the dark when he thinks no one's listening. You heard that? Every night. She smiled through her tears. Marcus, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to try. To let us in. To be part of a family again. Marcus felt something break inside him. Not something painful, but something that had been holding him back, keeping him frozen. He pulled Claire into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. I love you, he said into her hair. God help me, I love all 3 of you. And it scares me to death. Good, Claire said, her arms tight around him. Love should be a little scary. It means it matters. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, letting the words settle into truth. The job, Marcus said finally. You should still take it, but commute from here. This house is big enough for all of us. More than big enough. Claire pulled back to look at him. Are you asking me to stay permanently? I'm asking you to build a life here with me, if you'll have me. Her answer was a kiss, sweet and certain, and full of promise. They were still standing there, wrapped in each other, when Tommy's voice echoed up the stairs. "Mom! Mr. Marcus! Come quick! Rosie's talking to the nice lady again, and she says it's important." They found Rosie in the music room, sitting at the piano. The child's face was radiant. "She says goodbye," Rosie announced. "She says her job is done. She brought us together like she wanted, and now she can rest happy." "Rosie," Claire began, but Marcus squeezed her hand. "What else did she say?" he asked gently. Rosie tilted her head, listening to something only she could hear. "She says to tell you that love is never a mistake. She says the house was always meant to be full of family and laughter and children running in the gardens. She says..." The child's voice took on a different quality, almost as if someone else was speaking through her. "She says, 'Thank you for coming home, my darling boy. Thank you for letting your heart open again. I'm so proud of you.'" Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'm sorry it took me so long." Rosie smiled. "She knows. She says she's always known. And she says..." The child giggled. "She says the ring is in the library, third shelf from the top, behind the Shakespeare. Your father's grandmother's ring. She's been saving it." Marcus and Claire stared at each other, then at Rosie, who had turned back to the piano and was playing a simple melody with her small fingers. The same song his mother used to hum, note perfect, despite never having lessons. "Well," Claire said shakily, "I guess your mother really does know best." That evening, after the children were asleep, Marcus found the ring exactly where Rosie had said it would be. It was beautiful. A simple gold band with 3 small diamonds, old-fashioned and perfect. He found Claire in the garden, standing among the roses in the twilight. "My grandmother wore this ring for 60 years, Marcus said, holding it out. "My mother wore it until she met my father. Then she saved it. She told me once that she was keeping it for someone special, for when I found the right person." Claire's hand flew to her mouth. "I know it's fast," Marcus continued. "I know we should probably wait, be sensible, take our time. But I've wasted 7 years being sensible and alone. I don't want to waste another day." He took her hand. "Claire Bennett, would you marry me? Would you let me be a father to your children? Would you help me turn this house back into a home?" "Yes," Claire said, laughing and crying at once. "Yes to all of it." The ring slid onto her finger like it had been made for her, and in that moment, standing in the garden his mother had planted, Marcus felt a warmth surround him. Not frightening, but comforting. A presence, witnessing and approving. Then it was gone, leaving behind only the scent of roses and the certainty that his mother was, finally, at peace. 6 months later, the Whitmore estate blazed with lights and music. Marcus and Claire's wedding was small but perfect. Just a handful of close friends, business associates who'd become genuine companions, and the 2 children who'd made it all possible. Tommy served as ring bearer with solemn pride, dressed in a miniature tuxedo. Rosie was flower girl, scattering petals and announcing to anyone who'd listen that the nice lady had promised to watch from heaven. As Marcus and Claire exchanged vows in the garden where his parents had married 40 years before, a breeze stirred the roses, carrying their scent through the evening air. Tommy could have sworn he saw an older woman in an old-fashioned dress standing by the rose arbor, smiling. But when he blinked, she was gone. The reception spilled through the house and gardens. Marcus danced with his new wife, with his new daughter, taught his new son a clumsy waltz. The estate rang with laughter and music and life, everything it had been missing for 7 years. Late in the evening, Marcus found himself alone in the library for a moment. He ran his hand along the shelf where he'd found his grandmother's ring, where his mother had hidden it, waiting. "Thank you," he whispered to the quiet room, "for everything. For bringing them to me, for teaching me that sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones we almost overlook, for reminding me that a house is just walls until love makes it a home." The library remained silent, but Marcus didn't need an answer. He understood now. His mother hadn't brought Claire and her children to the estate by chance or by ghost. She'd simply trusted the house, trusted the universe, trusted that when the time was right, everything would fall into place, and it had. Marcus returned to the garden where his family waited, because that's what they were now, truly and completely. Claire caught his eye and smiled. Tommy was showing guests his favorite car in the garage, and Rosie was dancing in the moonlight, her arms raised as if embracing the whole beautiful world. The billionaire who'd returned to his mansion after years away had found more than a house full of unexpected guests. He'd found purpose, love, and redemption. He'd found that sometimes the greatest fortune isn't the one you build, but the one that finds you when you're finally ready to receive it. The Whitmore estate would never be empty again.